Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 2, Text 11. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Ashochan Anvashochastvam Pragyavadangscha bhashase Gatasun agatasunscha Nanusochanti panditaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Purport: the Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, "You are speaking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is body and what is soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition." As explained in later chapters, it will be clear that knowledge means to know matter and spirit and the controller of both. Arjuna argued that religious principles should be given more importance than politics or sociology, but he did not know that knowledge of matter, soul and the supreme is even more important than religious formularies. And because he was lacking in that knowledge, he should not have posed himself as a very learned man. As he did not happen to be a very learned man, he was consequently lamenting for something which was unworthy of lamentation. The body is born and is destined to be vanquished today or tomorrow. Therefore the body is not as important as the soul. One who knows this is actually learned, and for him there is no cause for lamentation regardless of the condition of the material body. In the modern world, there are many books written on and seminars held about personal relationships and how we should deal with others in the absence of traditional culture. Various self-styled gurus are advising on how we should behave. This is especially prominent in the Western world, but as you're all well aware, the gulf between the West and the East is much less than it used to be, and much of the Western ideas or Western mannerisms, usages, etc., they are very much influential in India also. So one of the important principal points that these New Age gurus, as they are called, they emphasize is that of empathic listening. And this appears to be derived from Freudian psychoanalysis, that the psychoanalyst should listen to what empathically. You know what that means? It means similar to sympathetically. It's sharing in their or distress or happiness or whatever it might be. Mostly distress. People don't go to psychoanalysts to express their happiness. They go to express their distress. So the idea is you should listen to them, and then they can speak it all out, and then they feel better, having expressed what is in their mind. And this idea also, it's another common idea that you should express yourself, what you're feeling. You should get it out, get your ideas out and emotions out, and everyone should express their opinion. In fact, one of these cell phone companies is Airtel, isn't it? Their advertisement is express yourself. So here in Bhagavad-gita we find that Arjuna expressed himself. He was feeling very distressed, and he told Krishna why he felt distressed, and he not only got out the feelings in his heart, but he gave a bit of a religious speech to Krishna also. He was preaching to Krishna that I don't want to fight, and here's why, and he gave all the reasons. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not empathically listen to Arjuna. He told him indirectly, not very indirectly, that you are a fool. He said that, Arjuna, you're talking in a manner, it sounds very learned, but really learned people don't talk like that. In other words, you're not learned at all. So in this way, those who are followers of Krishna, they may not necessarily listen to a bunch of nonsense that people talk, which generally, all the time, people throughout their whole lives, they talk nonsense. Because, as Srila Prabhupada notes, the prime symptom of a conditioned soul is that he speaks nonsense. So, most people do it throughout their lives, non-stop. It's just a bunch of garbage coming out of their mouths, constantly. And sometimes they put it in writing also. That's even worse. Formulated nonsense. Just like Arjuna, he formulated a theory. But Krishna immediately chopped him and said, "You are speaking like a fool. Don't go on talking like this. It's a bunch of nonsense. You're talking in a manner that you think is very learned, and other people, they may also think it's very learned, but it's nonsense. Because it's based on dehatma buddhi, identifying the body with the soul." Now, we do see that Arjuna, Srila Prabhupada writes here, was not very learned, but actually, in one sense, he was very learned. I mean, who can understand all these topics of Bhagavad-gita as Arjuna did? And Arjuna asked questions to Krishna, which shows that he wasn't totally ignorant of the Vedantic concepts which Krishna was speaking about. These are Bhagavad-gita is known as Gita Upanishad. So we find in Bhagavad-gita the summation of all the topics in the Upanishads. So we find Arjuna asking Krishna, Kim tad brahma kim adhyatma, king karma purushottamam, adidaivam cha king proktam. What's the last line? I can't. Adibhutam cha king proktam, adidaivam cha adibhutam, can you say? Okay, thank you. So these are all, and Krishna just gives very terse answers to all of them, all of these questions, just one-word answers, which leaves the pundits interpreting it in different ways. But all these concepts that what is Brahma, what is Adhyatma, what is Adidaiva, Adibhuta, what is Karma, these are very, we could say, philosophical topics. So Arjuna was learned in one sense. He had conception or concept of the topics that Krishna was speaking about. But he missed the basic point, which is the entrance into Vedanta, which is understanding that we're not the body. So Krishna, and he, on the basis of that, he was talking religiously. He was talking in terms of dharma. Arjuna's main argument for not fighting was that adharma bhibavat Krishna, there will be adharma. The result, the consequence of the imminent slaughter will be adharma. Anyway, Krishna doesn't accept what he says. Of course, it may be stated that Arjuna had already accepted Krishna as his guru and they already had an intimate relationship. So there was already great trust between Krishna and Arjuna, which might not be in an ordinary situation where you meet someone and they just start talking, and we might postulate that it's not that everyone we meet, we just cut them out and tell them they're a nonsense. We may or we may not do. We see in many cases that Srila Prabhupada did do so. In some cases he didn't. There's modern mythology. We've all heard of Hindu mythology. So modern mythology in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada has been mythologized as the all-accommodating, nice Swami who smiles at everyone, and whatever anyone does, he just forgives it, and he never says anything nasty to anyone, or even if he does, if he's a little heavy, then afterwards he's... Whatever it is, there's a kind of confabulated Prabhupada. Confabulation is a psychological term in which you imagine something to be true and then you take it to be absolute reality, even though it's just your imagination. So there's a imagine Prabhupada as someone who is very nice and just smiled at everyone all the time. And as one of my godbrothers has been propagating a lot, that Srila Prabhupada did speak very strongly and said that scientists and various scholars, they're demons and animals and other terms he used, but when Srila Prabhupada met them, he was always very polite and treated. This is what one of my godbrothers is postulating, but another of my godbrothers, these are senior godbrothers, GBC men, pointed out that the Sadaputa Prabhu, another of our godbrothers who passed away recently, he had told this other godbrother who was rebutting the idea of the always polite to scholars Prabhupada, that whenever he, Sadaputa Prabhu, a scientist, would introduce biologists to Srila Prabhupada would almost always say, "Poor frogs." In other words, he was poking the biologists for cutting frogs. It appears, or we can postulate from this, that Srila Prabhupada had biology class at school in which they were asked to cut frogs. I also remember Hare Krishna, things like that. Not very pleasant. Cutting, anyway. Yeah, please announce it. Or shall I announce it? KA01AB1579 is blocking the road. Will the owner please move it? KA01AB1579. No one got up. Maybe it's nothing to do with us. Yeah. Sorry? Frog dissection. We're back to frog dissection. Anyway, the point being made here is that Srila Prabhupada was not always polite, you might say, to scholars. There was another case where a devotee who was studying in the university brought one of his professors to meet Srila Prabhupada. This was an Indian professor, and Srila Prabhupada detected that the man was very puffed up, and immediately Srila Prabhupada was very heavy with him, and within about 5 minutes Prabhupada and the professor were shouting at each other, and then the professor was taken out of the room. So Prabhupada and the devotee who brought that professor wondered why was Prabhupada so strong, and it made it very difficult for him, the devotee. But that devotee related that many years later, that professor, who was actually from a Vaishnava, Vallabh Sampradaya background, but who had become an atheist or puffed up rascal. He said that later, some years later, he reflected on how Prabhupada dealt with him, and he realized that actually Prabhupada was right, I'm a puffed up rascal. And that professor went back to his Vallabh Sampradaya practices. So Prabhupada's anger at that person had its effect. It took some time. Now, sometimes Prabhupada would... There are many cases. I can recite many. I'm fond of reciting such instances because it reveals the transcendental commitment of our Acharya, that he will not brook nonsense. But there are instances where Srila Prabhupada apparently empathically listened. The result is the same, inasmuch as, for instance, in Germany, the first disciple of Srila Prabhupada who went to Germany was from America. He didn't speak German, not much. Shivananda Prabhu. So he related how he brought one German Sanskrit scholar to meet Srila Prabhupada. And for a long time, Prabhupada and the scholar were speaking together in Sanskrit, which Shivananda didn't understand. And after a long time speaking, the scholar said to Srila Prabhupada in English, he said, so what you're basically saying to me is that everything I said is nonsense. Srila Prabhupada said, yes. So they spoke for a long time, and generally people who speak in Sanskrit think they have an advantage over others, and that automatically shows them to be in a better position than others. But Srila Prabhupada also spoke Sanskrit, and he revealed to that person by scholarly discussion that he was talking nonsense. So it's not just that by speaking Sanskrit or knowing Sanskrit that one becomes tattvavit, a knower of the fact of reality. In fact, much of the world's greatest nonsense, it has been written in Sanskrit. For instance, so much of Buddhist writings are written in Sanskrit. And Buddhism is up, down, inside out, back to front, any way you look at it, a bunch of nonsense. whether it's in Sanskrit or whatever language it's in. Anyway, Prabhupada did listen to this Sanskrit scholar empathically. Maybe not empathically. He discussed with him. He didn't immediately, as Krishna does here with Arjuna, tell him that you're talking nonsense. Of course he might have done, but at least Prabhupada might have done with that scholar, we don't know. But it came to that point anyway, where the scholar realized from Srila Prabhupada's talking to him that Srila Prabhupada was directly or indirectly telling him that he was talking nonsense. Now, there may be a case for listening empathically, but one should not actually be empathic with people who are nonsensical. Empathic means atmopam yena sarvatya, that what is that? Samam pashyati Arjuna sukham va yadi va dukam so sayogi paramo mataha. Lord Krishna says he is the topmost yogi who empathizes with others, who feels as if one with their distress and happiness. So if one listens to others and thinks that, yeah, well, what you're saying is good. If we actually think that people who are talking nonsense, they're actually saying something good, then we're in a dangerous position. Ourselves, we become affected by that. This idea that there's another modern idea that, well, what everyone says it's good. We should listen to everyone and let everyone express their opinion. But Bhagavad-gita is a treatise on actual reality. And Srimad Bhagavatam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu. Srila Prabhupada translates this as reality distinguished from illusion for the benefit of all. There is a difference. It's a mayavad to think that all opinions are good. No. One opinion is good and every other opinion is a bunch of nonsense. The one opinion is Krishna's opinion. That is reality. 1 + 1 = 2. If someone says that 1 + 1 = 1.999, he's a fool. It equals 2 exactly, and not 1.999 or 2.0001. And definitely not 3. And definitely not even 1.999. 1 + 1 = 2. So what Krishna speaks, that is reality. And everything else that goes on in the name of philosophy in the world, pritivite, joto kotha, dharma name chale, bhagavata kahe taha, paripurna chale. Everything that goes on, everything that's discussed throughout the world in the name of dharma, according to the Bhagavatam, it's simply all cheating. So there is a danger if we, in this idea that, well, we should just listen to everyone, and it's considered that it's your duty as a gentleman, as a cultured person, to listen to what others say. But as we see here, Krishna doesn't do that. If we listen to what others say, there's a danger that we reinforce in their minds that they have something valuable to say. That, oh, this person's listening to me, he's taking me seriously, that means what I say is important. Everyone thinks that what they say is important. But the only people who have anything of value to say are, well, the only person is Krishna and others who speak in parampara from Krishna. And everything else, well, there may be glimmers of truth in it. Just like I was speaking about Buddhism. There may be some glimmer somewhere there of truth. The idea, well, yes, they also accept that birth, death, old age and disease, that is miserable. So yes, that's true. But then their response to that is nonsense. And the fact that they don't look for Krishna, they don't recognize the Supreme Controller, it means that even though they recognize that birth, death, old age and disease is miserable, as Lord Krishna points out in Bhagavad-gita, that they're still demons because they're deliberately avoiding Krishna and they want to relegate Krishna to nothingness. In everything. Everything is nothing. We could summarize Buddhism. There are various strains of Buddhism. But anyway, the point is that if we listen to people who are talking nonsense, then we give them credence. So it's better to make our own propaganda. Our own propaganda means to broadcast the truth. Now, of course, living in this world, we have to interact with various people. It's not that every time we walk on the street we have to grab people and try to change their whole way of thinking on the spot. There's some pragmatism has to be employed also. But at the same time, we shouldn't be victimized by this materialistic propaganda that all opinions are good. That means that all opinions are on the same level as Krishna's opinion. That means that Krishna's opinion has no value, no specific value. But there is a difference between right and wrong. What Krishna says is right. That which is in line with what Krishna says is right. Right means that which is for the ultimate benefit of everyone. And any discussion or idea or philosophy which does not focus us on and propel us toward surrender to Krishna, it is avoiding that point and therefore diverting us from that which is actually beneficial. Therefore it is of the nature of non-truth. Now someone may say, well, this is very fanatical. Now, we are right. There are many fanatics within the world who propagate that we are right and everything else is wrong. That's true. Anyone who propagates that we are right and everyone else is wrong. Except one, because there's only one right. Well, who is that one? That we should find by a philosophical understanding. We don't just propagate that we are right, just like Krishna doesn't just say to Arjuna, listen, you nonsense, just shut up and do what I say. I'm right, I'm God. Do what I say or burn in hell forever. Krishna doesn't say that to Arjuna. He says to Arjuna, he explains to him the science of the self, and then he tells him, this is why philosophically you should understand this, and if you don't follow, then actually you do burn in hell, but you can be delivered from there also, not forever. You can go for a long time. But Krishna presents everything philosophically and intelligently. He is not presenting something fanatical. Now, this term fanatic is often used within our society to label persons like myself who present the teachings of Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in a forceful manner. However, Srila Prabhupada, he defines fanaticism as one of two branches of religion without philosophy. One aspect of religion without philosophy is sentimentalism, and another is fanaticism. So generally, those who are sentimentalists, those who are not philosophical, they label persons like myself as fanatics. But as I understand it, I don't fit that description that's given by Srila Prabhupada, because I present philosophy. If I was simply to say, believe in Krishna or burn in hell, that would be fanaticism. But as and I'm just saying I too, as I'm a representative of those who are called fanatics, as I present in a philosophical manner that which is presented in Shastra, then according to Srila Prabhupada's definition, that is not fanaticism. And actually, if we do study Srila Prabhupada's books and we study Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll find that it is a very strong message. Lord Krishna, for instance, Lord Krishna repeatedly uses the word mudha in Bhagavad-gita. Mudha means a fool. And Lord Krishna repeatedly uses this word to describe, for instance, avajananti mang mudha. Those who do not know me, they are fools. They say manushing tanamashritam, that I've taken shelter of a human body. Param bhavam ajananto, they do not know my superior nature. Mama bhuta maheshwaram, and that I am the supreme controller of everything in existence. So Lord Krishna speaks very strongly because it's a very strong situation. It's a very intense situation, that if we don't know Krishna, we have to suffer intensely, birth after birth after birth. So it's a situation, we have this brief human life in which we are bombarded by all kinds of nonsensical ideas, and Krishna consciousness is vital, it's essential. It's not just another opinion. It is essential. So that should be presented. The parampara system is to present this matter strongly as Krishna presented it, but with philosophical understanding. Not just strongly, not just using... Prabhupada said they're all animals, fools, rascals, demons. Bas. No, you don't say anything else. But just like Srila Prabhupada said, it's not enough to know that God is great. You should know how He is great. So similarly, it's not enough to call non-devotees fools, rascals, and demons. You should understand why and how they are fools, rascals, and demons, so that we ourselves don't partake of their foolishness, rascalness, and demonness, and that we can convince them that they're all mudhas, and they should change their life. As Srila Prabhupada said, he concluded one lecture when he was speaking to a large gathering at the Mayapur festival, a large gathering of his disciples from all over the world, and he concluded one lecture by saying that the whole world is being misled because of these mudhas. They're giving wrong knowledge because they're mudhas. Therefore you should go to all these mudhas and tell them very clearly, you are all mudhas. And that was the end of the lecture. So we should not just, it's not a matter of name calling, but of understanding the actual situation. It is a very extreme situation, and Krishna consciousness, to actual Krishna consciousness as described in Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not a part-time hobby. It's not a Sunday outing, religious Sunday activity, and a little mumbling on some beads during the week when we get time, sometimes. But rather we find in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajetam Paramam Purush, that the Supreme Lord is to be worshipped intensely. We find in Bhagavad-gita, Ananya Cheta Satatam, Yomang Smarati Nityashaha. Lord Krishna refers to those who remember Him without deviation. Again and again we find this mentioned in Bhagavad-gita. This Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, always glorifying me. Yatantascha Juravrataha, and worshipping me with durata, with great determination. So this half-hearted, wishy-washy, take it or leave it, be nice to everyone, smile at everyone, this is not what we find from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. What was it? Someone was telling me that a senior preacher in ISKCON, so-called, was telling his poor congregation, misled by him, that, oh, you don't have to give up demigod worship, just add Krishna and your smile. This is not going to bring us to the firm determination to surrender to Krishna, knowing Him to be Aham Adir Hi Devanam, He's the origin of all the demigods. There's not going to bring us to, how is this going to bring us to the point of understanding what Krishna says? That Kamaistai Hritagyanam, those who worship demigods, their knowledge is spoiled. Antava tu palam tesham tad bhavat yalpamedasam. Lord Krishna says those who worship demigods, they're simply fools with very little intelligence. So this idea, you just add Krishna and your smile. It's just cheating people by wanting to get a reputation as being nice. So I count myself as extremely fortunate that I in my youth I didn't believe that there was anyone who, I was skeptical that there was anyone who actually knew the truth or could convey that, but I was very fortunate to come to the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, who did not compromise on presenting reality as it is. With that, he didn't deliberately, or he didn't as a policy, deliberately try to upset people. That would be the opposite of empathic listening or empathic speaking. But on the other hand, he didn't think that preaching simply means to make people feel nice, make people feel good. Like this so-called art of living rascal who says that my aim in life is to put a smile on everyone's face. Sounds very nice, huh? Just like Arjuna, sounded very nice. But he's a rascal, because if he's actually a sadhu, he should tell everyone that you can only smile if you're in Krishna consciousness, surrendered to Krishna. And as in this material world, it's full of birth, death, old age and disease. So what is there to smile about? If you're trying to live happily in this world, his propaganda, how you can live happily in this world, is just utter materialism. Therefore he's a rascal, and more of a rascal because he pretends to be a sadhu. So we should understand this through the eye of Shastra. that these persons are simply cheating. They're not sadhus. They're taken the garb of sadhus. Loya sadhu besh. What is that? Loya sadhu besh. Korinana upadesh. I take the garb of a sadhu and instruct others. But we should instruct as Krishna instructs, which means that how the person in his illusion feels, that is not our concern. Our concern is to take them out of that illusion. If someone feels somewhat happy in their illusion, that doesn't help them. It's simply to make people have a good feeling when they're about to have their head blown off. That is not helping them. We should rather tell them, hey, get your head, move, you're about to be shot dead. We should warn them, you're in a very dangerous position. You have this human life. If you don't cultivate Krishna consciousness, then you're simply spoiling your opportunity. This should be imparted. As we don't always have to say it by shouting and screaming and yelling at them or speaking in what would be considered an impolite manner, but this knowledge has to be imparted. Once Srila Prabhupada was lecturing a pandal in Bombay, as it was called at that time, and he was speaking very strongly, as was usual for Srila Prabhupada. Those who listen to his lectures will know that his lectures are not meant for mollycoddling people's feelings. So many people, they got up and left. They felt themselves insulted. Afterwards, Srila Prabhupada commented that therefore book distribution is the better preaching. Because when they read it in the book, then it's they don't feel it's personally directed toward them. So it's not that Srila Prabhupada stopped speaking in this manner or stopped, but he said that the book distribution, in which in Srila Prabhupada's books these same points are made very clearly and very strongly, but Srila Prabhupada considered that better preaching than lecturing. Again, it's not that lecturing should stop, or speaking to people individually should stop, or speaking in a manner that they can speaking in a manner non-empathically, that should stop. But Srila Prabhupada said that book distribution, that is better preaching. So even if someone speaks in a very learned manner, and often it sounds very good, just like Srila Prabhupada, one devotee told me, one of my godbrothers told me that he became convinced about Srila Prabhupada when he heard Srila Prabhupada talking about the United Nations as a bunch of dogs barking. Because at that time, nowadays everyone knows the United Nations is a bunch of dogs barking. I mean, more or less, everyone knows that it's a cheating organ. Well, anyone who's got a little awakened intelligence could understand it's a political body. It's not really concerned with the welfare of others. But at that time, everyone thought, oh, United Nations, very noble. And Srila Prabhupada was the first to point out that it's just a bunch of dogs barking. If you bring a bunch of dogs together, how are you ever going to unite them? You have to make them into human beings. Then there's a question of unity. Otherwise, the flags are always increasing. Srila Prabhupada pointed out. Outside the United Nations building, the number of flags is increasing. That means the nations are becoming more disunited. So he became convinced that, oh, here's someone who has such insights. He became convinced by Srila Prabhupada's analysis. So Krishna took a very strong position as an instructor, not as... Sometimes we hear the word guru translated as spiritual guide. But Srila Prabhupada translated it as spiritual master. Guide means that, well, someone tells you something and you can take it or leave it. But master means take it. That you have to take it. You're controlled. One submits oneself to be controlled by the guru. So nowadays it's more like do-it-yourself bhakti. Like you think you just pick up a book and you learn something, and then you accept a guru, put his picture on the wall and wave some incense at him and take his blessings for doing whatever you like. But that's not what a guru means. That's not how Krishna took the role of a guru. He instructed Arjuna thoroughly. But he was not wishy-washy with Arjuna. He made everything very clear. He didn't accept that Arjuna's professed learned words or high-sounding sentiments, Krishna didn't accept. That actually your intention is very good. So we should know this, that it's not that everyone who seems good or seems to be spiritually advanced, that they are good or they are spiritually advanced. We have to test according to the guidelines of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. In this test, Arjuna, he thought, wow, I really got a good argument there. I mean, there's nothing Krishna can say. It's a fact. I got it right, and there's... But Krishna immediately said, no, you got it all wrong. So similarly, people, they may seem to be very good, just like I was saying, art of living. And many people, the general consensus seems to be that this certain rascal, I'm just using him as an example, there are so many, that he's very good, but he's not good. Because even though he speaks on the Upanishads sometimes maybe, and he speaks, I don't know what he speaks, it must be a bunch of nonsense, whatever it is, but you always see him with a smile. He certainly doesn't speak to people to surrender to Krishna, because we don't see that his so-called followers, they surrender to Krishna. So that immediately proves that everything he says is nonsense. Whatever he says, however he says it. Be good, be nice. But actually there's no way to be good or to be nice without being Krishna conscious. That includes everyone. Mother Teresa, the great saint, meat eater, living in Calcutta all her life, never took up Krishna consciousness even though she's in the land of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Concerned with the body. So many faults are there. If we say this, then people become upset. But the fact is the fact. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvari gunais tatra samasite suraha harav abhaktasya kuto mahanguna manoratena asati dhavato bihi. Those who are devotees of Krishna, they have all good qualities. And those who don't, they may appear to have good qualities. Though those who are not in Krishna consciousness, they may appear to have good qualities, but they don't. Hare Krishna. Is there any question about this, please? Oh, yeah. Do we have an extension mic or a cordless? You have a cordless mic? Let's have that out. Yeah, ask your question. I'll repeat it. When we are preaching to murhas, yeah. We have to speak the truth, yeah. Yeah, upadesho hi murkanam prakopaya na nashantaye. If we instruct fools, then they won't become pacified. It's like giving milk to serpents. So we have to see our capacity also. That also has to be considered. There's some consideration of... Well, actually that's not a transcendental instruction. Srila Prabhupada does quote that. That's a general ethical principle. It's not a transcendental... To speak the truth of Krishna consciousness is always good, whether people accept it or not. As a matter of pragmatism, we may not in every case, as I was saying, when we go on the street, it's not that we catch everyone and try to reform them on the spot. And it's not that everyone will accept what we say. When that example is given, that payo panam bhujanga, no, that's enough. Kevala vishavardhanam, that's the example given. If we give milk to a snake, the poison simply increases. Therefore, we don't have to try and philosophically reassemble everyone's misconceptions on the spot. We can give them Prabhupada's books. That's another way of doing it. Give them Krishna Prasadam. Yeah.
I have one question from morning Bhagavad class. Should I ask?
Let's see if there are any more questions from this class. Yeah. The ninth offense against the holy name is to preach the glories of the holy name to faithless persons. Yeah, the glories of the holy name, that's quite an advanced topic. So simply to delineate the actual, the basics of reality, as for instance Srila Prabhupada, if we see his basic preaching to the world, there were two topics or 2 points that he repeatedly made. One is that we are not the body. We are eternal spirit soul. The other one is that we are not the controller. We are controlled. Therefore we should accept that there is a controller. These 2 points Srila Prabhupada in his public preaching repeatedly made. So, when people are at the level of faithlessness, we should preach to them on these points. When their faith is somewhat developed, that there is a supreme controller, then we can introduce that this supreme controller is Krishna, and then we come to the point of introducing the glories of Krishna's name. Krishna's name and Krishna are non-different, but it's not that we go to faithless people and tell them that Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, then the name of Krishna is fully pure and spiritual and transcendental. It is complete. It's always a liberated sound. We don't get into the intricacies of Nama Tattva with people who have no faith in the holy names of Krishna or in Krishna. Anything else? Yeah, if you're preaching about Krishna to people who are faithless, therefore in the beginning they preach that we're not the body, there is a supreme controller. And if they accept that there's a supreme controller, then the next point is that that person is Krishna. It's not that everything is presented all at once. Yeah, then?
Prabhu, I want to ask, if Buddha is the incarnation of Lord Krishna,
yeah,
then how Buddhist principles are wrong? And I have heard a lot of interviews of Dalai Lama. He never criticizes about Krishna. He believes Krishna is the supreme God.
He believes that Krishna is the supreme God, yeah, and that we should surrender to him and follow his instructions fully.
He surrendered to Buddhism.
But wait a minute, he accepts Krishna as the supreme, yeah, then why doesn't he follow Krishna's instructions?
Same thing,
no? Buddha's instructions are different to those of Krishna in Bhagavad-gita. There is some similarity. But Buddha, even though the Buddhists, what is that? Sharanam? Was that the... what is it? Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. But Buddha, he didn't say that. Krishna says, surrender to... Krishna establishes himself as the Supreme Lord. And then he tells Arjuna to surrender to me. Buddha doesn't do this. Buddha doesn't speak about the Supreme Lord. He doesn't touch the subject even of Atma, which is the first teaching of Krishna. So Buddha, he came for a special purpose. Because at that time, people using, on the excuse of making Vedic sacrifices, they were killing many animals. So Lord Buddha spoke that therefore we should not follow the Vedas. What is that? This Nindasi yagya vidher ahaha shruti jatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashughatam keshava dhrita buddha sharira jaya jagadisha hare. Lord Buddha decried the Vedas because the Vedas were being misused. And because people were using the Vedas to be meat eaters. So to get people away from that, because their consciousness was so polluted, he told them, okay, forget the Vedas. But then we find the traditional Buddhists throughout the world, like Dalai Lama, they're all meat eaters. So they lost the point. But those who follow Buddha's principles, they're called Nastic. Vedna Mania Bodh Hoilo Nastic. Because by rejecting the Vedas, they become atheists. So again, it may seem he's speaking something very good. Dalai Lama speaks of peace, but where's the peace for the animals that he's eating? That's Buddha, that ahimsa paramadharma. But the Buddhist idea is that, just like I was in Thailand, which is a staunchly Buddhist country, Theravada, that means hardcore Buddhism. So there are Muslims in that country also, and they are the butchers. The Buddhists, they will never kill an animal, but they eat meat bought from the Muslim's butcher shop. Or they catch the fish and they take it out of the water. They don't kill the fish, but it just dies because it's out of the water, and then they eat it. Or if you go in the street in Bangkok, you'll see they have live grasshoppers in a jar, and they have a wok of a karai of hot oil, and they empty the live grasshoppers into it. I don't know if I guess they're not Buddhists who do that. Or anyway, Buddhists, traditional Buddhists eat all kinds of things, which we don't want to discuss here. So, again, it's cheating. He's talking of peace. But why is there non-peace in the world? Because people are eating animals. And he's encouraging that. So he's a hypocrite. So don't be misled by all this, old man smiling nicely, dressed in a long robe. Peace. Give me another piece of chicken. Yeah.
So I am saying, that the people in Buddhism are wrong. Buddhism is not wrong.
No, real Buddhism is Krishna consciousness. As described in Bhagavad-gita, Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga means Buddha means who is intelligent, who is enlightened. So an actual Buddhist is one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and I am His eternal servant. And what goes on in the name of Buddhism is not real Buddhism. It's a misuse of Buddhism. Actual Buddhism is Krishna consciousness.
If I accept Krishna consciousness, but I do something wrong in Krishna consciousness,
there's nothing wrong in Krishna consciousness. If we're always thinking of Krishna favorably, it's all right.
Whatever I do, right or wrong, is right.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you should go out and eat chicken. But if we're actually in Krishna consciousness, then we won't eat chicken. Or if we do slip due to bad habit, that will quickly be rectified, as Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad-gita.
Prabhu, as you told that everything is controlled by Krishna. We don't have any...
Everything is controlled, but He gives us minute independence also. So we can choose what is right and wrong, what to do and what not to do.